For all your Canadian immigration needs, hiring an immigration lawyer has its benefits. He can appeal for you in the Federal Court of Canada and fight for you.
Sponsoring a spouse from outside Canada may seem to be the easiest and simplest type of application to submit at a Canadian embassy on the face of it. However, there are many mistakes that people make that give visa officers reasons to refuse the application. Today we're going to focus on what mistakes not to do and how to perfect an application for a spouse sponsorship to Canada. To begin with, a spouse under Canadian immigration law may mean three things. It may mean someone you're legally married to. It may mean someone you are not married to, but you have been living together for at least 1 year. That is known as a common law spouse. Or thirdly, a conjugal partner. A conjugal partner is someone who is not legally married to you, who you have not cohabited with for 1 continuous year, but is someone who you're committed to, and given the opportunity you will or may marry or live together for a long time. The main focus of today's topic is sponsoring someone you legally married to overseas. First of all, the marriage has to be legally valid in the country where it was performed. It doesn't matter where you live, as long as wherever you perform the wedding, the marriage is recognized legally in that country. You, as a sponsor, have to be at least 18 to be able to sponsor your spouse. You don't need to have income, you don't need to be in full-time employment to sponsor your spouse. There's no financial requirement. A lot of times, a lot of people think they don't have an employment, so they have to wait until they have a job to sponsor their spouse. That is not correct. The other important aspect of spouse sponsorship is it depends whether you're a Canadian citizen or a Canadian permanent resident. If you're a Canadian citizen, you may sponsor your spouse from outside Canada. You may continue to live with your spouse overseas while the sponsorship is being processed, which usually takes about 4 to 6 months if everything is okay. However, if you're a Canadian resident, you have to be in Canada. So basically what happens, you go, you get married overseas, and you come back. You have to be physically present in Canada to sponsor your spouse. While all that's happening, there are tedious number of forms to fill, and the questions that are asked, they look straightforward, but a visa officer has only that and some supporting documents that you have submitted to go by. And any question that is not answered truthfully or properly may lead to a visa officer having suspicion or doubt about the genuineness of your marriage and may refuse your application. That can delay your application for over 1 or 2 years. Usually an application for sponsorship of a spouse is pretty uneventful, and most applications are approved. However, there are things that a visa will look at. In your culture, is love marriage accepted, or is it common to have arranged marriages? If the marriages are arranged, then the visa officers will look at compatibility, whether you and your spouse, you and your partner are compatible in age, and they tie all that with the culture that you live in, your age, your education, whether you've been married before, you've been divorced, and the reason. Basically, a visa officer can delve deep into the story behind the marriage to see whether the marriage is genuine and not performed solely for the purpose of immigrating to Canada. There are two things that a visa officer will look at: the genuineness, and secondly, whether when you come to Canada you will reside with a spouse who you are married to. And if a visa officer has any doubt, then you will be called for an interview, and that interview is an opportunity for the visa officer to cross-examine you on the documents that you have submitted. So you have to be careful about what you write in your application, in the forms. You have to be truthful, and you have to be aware of certain things about your spouse when you go to the interview. Often you would go to the interview and you would think, this is easy, it's a genuine marriage, I'll answer the questions. But there are questions that are asked that you would never have thought. Someone may ask you things like that. which side of the bed your spouse sleeps on, whether he or she snores, things like that. And if you hesitate or you have doubt about something, you don't know about the place of work, the best friends in Canada, often that will lead to a refusal. Once an application is refused, you have the right to appeal, and you'll have to seek the advice of a lawyer in Canada to appeal, and that itself is a 12 to 15-month process. So to avoid all that, the best thing to do is to seek proper advice from a qualified Canadian immigration lawyer who can guide you along the way to a successful sponsorship of your spouse so that you can be reunited with your spouse in Canada as fast as possible.